So today is video journal, day one of 615 curriculum and instruction. Day one morning consisted basically of learning about the FELP coherence framework, teacher evaluations from Crystal House, and that's where the majority of my reflections come from. A couple things that I took away from that speech was, one thing is I need to know the standards of, if I'm going to be a principal at the secondary level, I should probably know and have an understanding of the standards for social studies, for science, for mathematics, so that way if I go into a class, I know those standards and I know what should and shouldn't be taught. If I'm going to be a middle school teacher, I need to know the middle school standards. If I'm an elementary teacher, I should probably have an understanding and study those standards, so that way when I go into the classroom, I know what standards being taught. Another takeaway that I took away from that is evaluations need to evaluate what you want from the student. So if you want to evaluate student outcome, you should have student outcomes in your evaluation. Evaluations are here to stay. I like what Crystal House did, because what they did was they noticed that they were on tap and they noticed it wasn't getting done what they wanted to get done. So within that system, what works for Crystal House, they created a system that works for Crystal House. If I take a job at, let's say, Beech Grove is going to have their evaluation system. Over the course of time, if I notice it's not working, I can advocate for a change in that, because I want to match the evaluation system to the system that it's in to get the gains that I want to get out of it. Day one was also interesting because it had the really cool reflective piece, the really interesting change game. So we had to work our way through the change game. It was really an interesting experience. One, because I consider myself to be, I thought I was more of a planner than what I actually turned out to be. I was wanting to act a lot quicker before people were ready. And I see that as I look back on things and questions that I've come up with my administration, I've wanted to do things faster than what they should be. So day two reflection journal. So day two is when the morning, when Saturday morning, I believe, and the superintendent of Brownsburg Schools, Jim Sapp, came in and talked to us about his theory of curriculum and instruction. There was a lot of interesting stuff that came out of it. A lot of it was very rigid. It came across as very rigid, but he was open to change if you had enough detail and had enough information to make him change. But really, one of the things that stuck out with me, probably the biggest, was his vertical alignment, his vertical articulation, his horizontal articulation. And essentially there was the picture up there that said written, what is taught, and what is tested need to be overlapped. Oftentimes in classes you can go through and you can see that the written curriculum does not match with what's taught, which doesn't also overlap with what is tested. And so if we're really wanting to figure out our outcomes and we really want to get the best outcome, what you teach should be what you test. And his idea of tight, loose, tight didn't really seem a little loose in the middle. It said it was loose, but yet he also made the statement that if you walked into any elementary school in the district at the same day, at the same time, they're probably going to be teaching the assignment in the same way. Doesn't come across as loose. Interpreting a 30, 60, and a 90-day plan, I think that's important when we go into a job. If we go in and we know what's going on, or even if we don't know what's going on, presenting some ideas with them and saying, hey, we're going to break down this data, we're going to take a look at this, and this is how we plan on addressing and attacking some of the issues that we see possibly showing up. Predict it, show the data, and then talk about what you see from the data. Then you can build your inferences, you can build that. I like that tied in with the curriculum stuff that we were received on day 3 as well. So I'm doing this after a couple days after day 2, but we received information about building curriculum. So I feel like if you're using data-driven dialogue and data-driven decision-making, you probably should do this before you go into making any set curriculum. So if you're going to change the way that you do your biology classes, you probably should go look at the data, take a look at the data, make the data visible, then use that, because you're assessing the need, which is one of the key things from that building the curriculum. Day 3. Day 3, probably because it was the last thing we did, reminds me a lot of evaluation, and that's all I pretty much took away from that class, was evaluation. And not just evaluation, the conflicting issues that I'm dealing with more or less is, one, evaluating the lesson as it says on the rubric. there are some people that in that room, I feel, were putting their own personal feelings into their evaluations of the rubric. Like, they thought it didn't say this. Well, that's not what a rubric is. A rubric to me is cut and dry. A rubric says if it says these words, then it says these words, and it matches. There were people that I didn't think that it matched that level of rigor or something of that nature. And just the way that people interpret the same thing that you see. So you can watch a video and one person will see that statement one way and another person will see and completely hear that statement in a completely different way. Like, the power of one or two words can change the way you interpret what you're seeing. And that is the subjective nature of evaluations. So do we need evaluations? The answer to that question, I feel, is yes. We always have to have evaluations. Does there need to be calibration of those observations? Yes. You always need to calibrate with your leadership team how you are going to consider which point is important and how you're going to look at that. And your staff needs to know that as well. But one of the things that they said in the Crystal House videos that you're doing evaluations not to get a number. Hold on, I think I wrote it. Evaluations is not, the purpose is not to get, the purpose of evaluation is to get better. It's not to achieve a number. And what we've built into our systems, though, because of the 2010-11 Tony Bennett rules, is that now schools are making that number your source of benefit. So you actually are teaching to get a number. You're not teaching to get better, because people are using that number as your evaluative bonus number. You shouldn't be using it that way. That is a misuse of what an evaluation is. The evaluation should be the building capacity to get the teachers to be able to perform to achieve the student outcomes. The other thing to take away from day 3 was my personal leadership, my self-identity. Who am I really? Great question. One of the things that Terry said in his class is you should probably sit down and do a SWOT analysis on yourself at some point. I need to sit down and take a message of SWOT analysis. Who am I? Where am I? Am I amend yourself? Am I an extend yourself? Or am I transcending myself? There's nowhere near transcending myself, let's be honest. But I'd like to get to breaking through stereotypes, and that the great quote from Lincoln, that some achieve great success shows that all can. And I need to get to that point in my life and get to that point in my leadership abilities, is get over my self-confidence issues, because it may not come across that way, but internally I always question whether or not I'm good enough. Day 4, what? Day 4. All right, so we get hit over the head over 9 hours a day in the classroom, and that's a lot to take in. So I may be hitting on some of my issues and maybe not taking away certain things, but there's a lot of information over the course of the last, I think we're at 18 days now, maybe even 19 days of the program. I typically handwrite notes, and we're talking over the last 5 classes or so, I have about 90 pages of notes. I write large, but still. There's a lot of information that's coming at me, and I like the fact that you're letting me use a video to reflect. The one thing that I felt was amazingly cool and amazingly helpful was the simulation that you did. I don't know if it would have been effective and it would have sunk in as much with me if it would have been done as watch a video and write a reflection. I think actually getting in there and actually doing it helped some of the people that hadn't had a coaching experience before. And then from my perspective, because I do some coaching at the high school, I do evaluations, but not for formal evaluations. Mine are for coaching purposes. So I've done some coaching before, but all it did is solidified some of those skills that I had, some of those observation skills that we've done, even though we talked about it extensively on day 1 and day 2 or day 3. Evaluations, I feel like, had been hit on 4 days out of these 3 of the 4 days. So 3/4 of the days of this class were about evaluation. However, this, I believe, was probably the most effective, just because you gave us the chance to take on the roles. You gave us a chance to actually get into it and give some people some practice answering and asking questions. I really liked the fact that who I chose to be my principal had never really done any coaching before and was still kind of feeling it out, and I just gave a couple subtle hints about how things I've done in the past, but she's good enough and she took it and made it her own. But it helped me do a little bit of coaching on the side, and that may be why I liked it the best, is because I was able to help coach somebody else through that process. Maybe I think that I'm more important than what I really am. I also enjoyed taking that practice principles test. I know we're only 14 days or 18 days into the program, but it helped me realize that there's a lot of stuff that I have picked up. Either I have picked up or there are things that I understand about leadership and about being a principal that I didn't know that I knew. So having those, setting up a professional growth plan and having those questions, those are things that I think either without even taking this class I might have been able to do based upon being in that mid-level management job, that mid-level leadership job that I have already. But it solidified the fact that I know what I'm doing. Whereas at the very beginning of the class, in the very beginning of this class, about 615, 617, I was wondering if I really wanted to continue. Like, is it really something that I really want to get into? Questioning myself, but then taking that principal practice test re-solidified the fact that, yeah, I want to do it, and yes, I know what I'm doing. And that was part of the reason why I was hesitant. Was, do I really know what I'm getting myself into? Do I really know what is being asked of me? And it turns out, yeah, because I missed one question, but I had an alternative answer. I had to decide between two because I thought two were the possible answers. Turns out on one of the questions, my alternate answer was the correct answer. So I was thinking the right way, just went ahead and went with the gut instinct and missed that question. But I got 7 out of 8 of those correct. So I felt like I said, I feel very confident on that. And that's also what I like to take away from that. I really do think the data project's going to become a major part of what would get me a job. I need to learn and grow as a data-driven person. The data work and the data assignment I'm hoping is going to push me into that and help make me understand those data-driven decisions. Say that a few more times fast. It'll help me understand those data-driven decisions a lot better, so that way I can then talk about creating curriculum and developing a curriculum, as you gave us before with the, I can't even remember the two. It was Ralph Tyner, and then there was another one that you gave us. Both of them essentially said start with an identity, identify a need, and then go through and then within that need find out what the objectives need to be taught. So part of identifying a need is going through the data, finding gaps. If you find a gap, obviously you have a need. Now let's drill down and find a little bit more specific, because we need to have it specific and measurable, but let's find that specific task so we can then develop the curriculum and make the curriculum stronger, so then we have that overlap like Jim Sapp was talking about, where you have a written curriculum that is going after what is being taught, which is then also then what is tested. So I feel like all of that comes from the data, and you have to drill down that data and be good at drilling down that data in a rather quick way. I'm getting better at it, but obviously I don't feel like I've made the best data decision in the past, which I need to grow in that area.